We are now recording as well. Hello and welcome to Sheffield Hopcast. We can't really call it lockdown anymore, can we? Because I think that's kind of like it's old news. It's kind of pretty much over. So today is our.
Can we come up with a new name? Can we come up with a new name to replace lockdown?
Virtual,
but not might be a normal.
Go on then, Sean.
Oh yeah, thinking
This is
fast now. Yeah,
you're delivering
soft
problems,
down.
not solutions.
Are we in a soft down?
soft down.
Soft down. Going to leave that one with you. We're going to move on.
Okay.
This is our. I think this is the second time actually that we've done a gluten-free episode. I'm pretty certain that we did one really near the start, way back when.
We've had Phantasma. I don't think we've done a special.
Oh, right. So we've just literally had one gluten-free beer. That's less impressive, actually. So this is actually a full-on gluten-free episode. There will be no gluten used in the making of this episode of the podcast. If you are watching this live on Facebook, then hello. There will also be the video of this on YouTube at some point when we get around to it. And, of course, the podcast version that you may well be listening to. So however you are... consuming the Hopcast, it is lovely to have you with us. We had a weekend off last weekend because we had a fairly crazy weekend, the one before, doing the first Chef Hopfest, which for some reason I was fine saying that right up until the weekend, and then lost the ability to say that phrase. I couldn't say it anymore. But yeah, I thought that was really good fun. Matt, who is joining us, who is Gluten Free Pint, Matt, you were on one of the sessions as well, if I remember correctly. Anyway,
I popped in for 2 minutes or so on Facebook, and that was about my limit. I think.
Oh right,
okay.
I'm picking that up then. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, it is good to have you with us for this episode, and yeah, I'm sure we'll reflect more on the Hopfest in a bit. So let's go around and say hello to everyone. Obviously, the theme this week is that we've got to have a gluten-free beer. I'm offering odds of 5-2 that at least two of us, possibly three of us, have got the same beer. So let's start with the person that I'm fairly certain has not got the beer in question. So let's go to Sean first. Who, if you did consume any of the of his session at the Hopfest, you'll know that we've now given Sean a microphone, which is great because we can actually hear what he's saying. But yeah, there it is. So he looks like uber professional now.
Well, I have a microphone, but due to some sort of technological glitch, which I'm blaming Adam for because he sent me the microphone, I can only plug it in and use it, but then listen to the audio via headphones. But that added bonus means I can hear everyone as well, so everyone can hear me in better quality, and I can hear everybody else. So my beer I've gone for, we had a delivery from Brass Castle this week. One of their beer, Sunshine, is a real favourite, but in the end I've gone for a darker beer because you don't get quite as many darker beers in the gluten-free world, and so I've gone for a very famous one. We opened our shop back up in late 2013, and so sometime in 2014 Bad Kitty came into my life, and so it used to be in a 500ml bottle conditioned, now in a can. Had it on cask lots of times before. It's a 5.5% vanilla porter, and I absolutely adore it. I've not had one for a few months, so Bad Kitty is my choice from Brass Castle over in Malton, of course.
Good choice. Thank you, Sean.
I've also got a new glass from Whiteface, Dave at Whiteface up in Penistone, Whiteface Brewery. Has got some new cool glasses, and so I'm supporting that today.
I did see your beer from him that you posted on Facebook that looks very, 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 very good.
They were fantastic.
I noticed that you're also joining the Beer Attire Club this week as well, with showing off your new North T-shirt, which is very impressive. I'm a big fan.
Laura really has set the standard over the last year or two on Chef Hopcast. So I have begged one or two T-shirts over the last few weeks to try and rival Laura's attire, and I know from what Laura mentioned just before we came live on air, she's running out of stuff to wear, on Chef Hopcast. So if there are any breweries out there want a sponsor Laura, then game on. If not, she's going to have to wear some of the old stuff again, which is appalling.
Or we could stop making a point of it, and then she'd do it.
Laura, have you got other clothes, Laura, that you can wear that are not brewery based?
Wedding dress.
I think beer clothes do make up, I'm going to say, the majority of my wardrobe, to be honest. But I do own other non-beer related clothing as well.
Did I hear you say wedding dress then, Adam?
Yeah.
Do you
Sorry,
remember that
James.
episode of the Simpsons where Marge Simpson buys one really expensive dress and then has to like cut it up and make it into different dresses every time she goes to this posh social club that she's joined, so that they don't think she's wearing the same thing all the time? This is an idea, Laura. You could each week, like, you know, take to pieces one of your beer tops and turn it into something new.
Yeah. Well, I have worn my wedding dress in lockdown, actually, just for fun. It was quite near the beginning, and one of my friends had a fancy dress related Zoom birthday party, and neither me nor Jim really go in for fancy dress, like costumes. So I was like, I'm just going to wear my fanciest dress, which was my wedding dress. So I did.
I look forward to the episode of the Hopcast where you just rock up wearing your wedding dress. That's going to be fantastic. That's great. We could do that as a theme, couldn't we? Like the most, I don't know,
fancy
wearing
dress.
the
Fancy
the
dress
poshest thing
fancy
that we've
dress
got.
Hopcast.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah. All right, I like that idea. Right, Laura, what is your beer and what is your beer T-shirt this week?
Okay, so I've done something I don't normally do this week, and I have gone for an Abbeydale beer, and I've gone classic. I've gone for Heathen, because simply because it's the first gluten-free beer that Abbeydale ever made, and originally, because the way that this is, it does have barley and wheat in it, but then contains an enzyme called brewer's Clarex, which is what breaks the gluten down to a level considered labelable as gluten-free. But what I thought was interesting is we initially didn't use the enzyme because it would cause the beer to be gluten-free. We added it because another thing that it does is it prevents chill haze forming in the beer. And with this being our first keg beer, but with us still supplying customers that expected a non-hazy beer, we had to look at other ways that we could ensure that a hoppy cold beer didn't develop haze, and that's where Brewer's Clarex came in. And I don't really know how long it's been used generally in the beer industry, but I think kind of the labelling of beers using it as gluten-free is a fairly new one. So obviously didn't label it as such initially because wanted to do ample rigorous testing on it to make sure that it was safe and all of that kind of thing. And yeah, it's something that we've since extended into adding to the majority of our beers, at least ones that go into can, really. So I just thought I'd get a little bit of science in there as well, and any excuse to crack a Heathen. And my T-shirt is a Manchester Together Hops Not Hate T-shirt that you can't really see.
Love it.
It's not hate.
Brilliant.
So,
I think that might be my favourite T-shirt that you've worn. That one, I love it. But I really like the hops not hate.
I don't wear it that often because it's a bit short. But while I'm sat down, it's fine.
It's great on the Zoom video where you could only see from kind of neck upwards, so it's all good. Right, this is where it starts getting awkward because there is a very high possibility that Adam and I have the same beer. So should we just reveal this together, kind of like, you know, slowly in front of the camera to see whether or not we have got the same beer? So if we just kind of like slowly kind of creep up, and we have, yes. So we both have the new.
There's
Wanderer.
a chance Matt might as well, but we'll find out in a minute.
I've left that one out.
I think I gave him a bit of warning that it might be
good move. So it's the new version of Wanderer. So I think this is the first time that I've drunk the same beer twice, kind of, because I had the last version of Wanderer about 4 or 5 weeks ago, when we did the Out and About special. So yeah, I have the new Wanderer, which is Nelson Sauvin and El Dorado New England IPA, and which has a Hopcast link because, Laura, this is your recipe, I believe.
Yeah, well, kind of. I chose the hop combination to go in this one.
Yeah, that counts as it being your recipe. That's fine.
That's enough. That's all it is, isn't it?
You can take all credit.
It's we don't normally get to use Nelson in very much because it's a core hop in Deception, which is one of the beers that we usually make week in, week out for cask. But obviously with the pubs having been closed, not being able to brew Deception as frequently, we have plenty of Nelson Sauvin left over, so I thought let's stick to the NEPA.
Does it mean that Nelson Sauvin's kind of back? Because like we've seen recent release of Kipling back into can, and that was famously was a Nelson Sauvin hop. I was wondering whether like there's been a good batch this year or last year.
Possibly, and it could also be, I saw an article earlier on that there's something like 800 tons of hops available, more than they usually are at the moment, with so many brewers decreasing their production recently. So it could also be that other breweries are, not needing what they usually have if they're making different beers and that kind of thing. But I don't really know. But I'm happy about the fact that there are more Nelson beers around because it's
just to bring this beer back, I got 2 cans of this yesterday from the Green Shop. Shout out to the Green Shop. And I had one last night and I enjoyed it so much that I was so close to cracking the other one and thinking, I'll just get something from the supermarket tomorrow. But I was good and I didn't. But it's so nice. It's so drinkable, this one. I did have the last one, but yeah, it's top class, Laura. So good choice on the hops. Good recipe.
Very good beer, that one.
Very nice, very nice. Right, Matt, so you haven't gone for Wanderer, but what have you gone for? And you appear to also be wearing a gluten-free beer T-shirt as well, which is particularly impressive.
I've gone for the Magic Rock Phantasma T-shirt, which I picked up from, I think it was a few years back now, when they actually launched Phantasma. I went to the launch evening of that and got a free T-shirt out of it. So that was that. But the beer I've gone for is the Brew York Olivia Gluten Gone, which is probably the best beer name I've heard in the gluten-free beer world so far. It's 5% pale ale. I think it's the 3rd gluten-free beer Brew York have done now. They did one before called, they're still making Serial Killer, which is a stronger New England IPA, and I think they did a pale ale as well, Glutinous Minimus, I think that one was called, which was mainly a cask beer, that one, which we haven't really seen much lately. Yeah, I've got a few of these delivered from the brewery, actually, the day they canned them. Only about a week or so back now, so it's one of the newest beers in the gluten-free world as well. Yeah, that's the one I've gone for today.
Good choice. If we had to do like a league table of breweries and their naming for beers, Brew York would be, beyond, they'd win the Champions League, let alone the Premier League, because they're superb. They're head and shoulders above everyone else. All right, good stuff. Now, Matt, I think we've had you on the Hopcast a couple of times at stuff like at Sheffield Beer Festival a couple of years ago and stuff like that. Although it was all very messy by that point, so it's great to kind of have you on properly and so we can kind of chat more. So if there's kind of anyone that doesn't know you and kind of what you do in terms of beer and the gluten-free pint sort of thing, just kind of fill us in really for anyone that maybe doesn't kind of know your background, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, what really happened with me and drinking gluten-free beer is I started working with Adam nearly 4 years ago now. Before that, I used to drink a lot of cider, and there's one supermarket bought lager that I used to drink a lot of. Adam was adamant that there were beer out there that I could enjoy. So, started going out drinking in Sheffield and managed to come across a number of different beers. Initially, it was from the likes of Brass Castle and First Chop Popped in to see Sean a few times, and I think that was back when you maybe had 3 or 4 different gluten-free beers in the range. I think there's sometimes up to 30 you've got in at the minute, isn't there? Well, obviously with lockdown it's changed a little bit, but yeah, so I basically started running a Twitter account first of all to try and put a bit of pressure on bars and pubs really to start stocking either gluten-free beer or a more adventurous option if maybe they only had like the likes of the supermarket bought stuff. Worked really well because it's probably not a pub I can go in Sheffield now and not enjoy a beer, which is great. And now I'm mainly more focusing on my Instagram account, where I just share photos of new beers really and reviews of them. I think I had my 530th unique gluten-free beer yesterday. So, I mean, there's quite a lot out there, loads of choice. And I get quite a few people asking me as well, like good places to go in Sheffield to drink, beers I'd recommend and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
It's impressive that you've kept count to 530, but can you remember what your 500th gluten-free beer was?
I can. It was actually in lockdown. It was the Abbeydale Isolation. I think it was pale ale, obviously Abbeydale brewed. Yeah, really nice beer, that one. Enjoyed in the first few weeks of lockdown, that one. Obviously,
good stuff. Well remembered.
More beers later.
It's quite interesting actually, because like I feel like I kind of went on that journey with Matt quite a bit because we were like as a drinking buddy, and it was quite interesting to see how quickly, because there was I don't know if you're still on it, Matt, but there was the Beer for Celiacs group on Facebook, and when Matt used to post stuff, it was quite evident after a while that Sheffield were getting tons more stuff that the rest of the country who were in that group weren't getting access to. And I think it were due to like Matt like gradually putting a little bit of pressure on people, like in a kind of not in like a aggressive way, but and then I kind of just used to keep an eye out for stuff myself because I always thought, well, I'll let Matt know if I see anything, and it just kind of escalated really quickly all of a sudden. I mean, DevCat, sorry to say that's gone, but DevCat I was like dedicated, just getting sectioned into it as well and stuff. And
I think there were always at least one keg and one cask on. I mean, I think that was one of the first pubs I went in, really, which opened my eyes and were like, oh, there's... I mean, Liz, that used to be the manager there, I think she was celiac herself, so that was kind of the reason behind all of the choice there, I think. But that probably helped develop the other bars in Sheffield as well, I guess, to have a much wider range as well. And then obviously Abbeydale went on to certify heathen, and I mean the rest of the range now that's obviously being marked gluten free as well, which is always good for me.
It's kind of sorry, go on.
I was going to say we've kind of we've talked a few times, haven't we, on the podcast about gluten free, but we must have had more than one on, because I feel like we've had this sort of conversation 2 or 3 times where we've sort of said there's this weird thing where people are like, oh, I don't want a beer that's gluten free, like give me the gluten, I want the gluten, and it doesn't, like, in terms of the taste, it makes absolutely zero difference. It was interesting, Laura, you kind of talking about heathen and that sort of process, but I'd struggle, well, I just wouldn't be able to tell that there's anything different about this beer to another New England style IPA. It just seems like so almost irrelevant, as if like, well, why is every beer not gluten free? Because it clearly doesn't affect the taste. Is it more difficult to brew a beer gluten free?
You literally just put the enzyme in. It comes in we get it in a fairly big jerry can, and just add the amount. It's an expensive thing to buy, the Brewers Clarex. It's I think possibly for smaller breweries potentially, it'd be quite a big investment. I mean, the amount you have to add isn't a lot, and for breweries like Abbeydale and I guess like Magic Rock, who I think use the same kind of process as well, it's per batch. It's, whilst it is obviously an added cost, it's something that in a big batch of beer isn't going to make a huge amount of difference, and it's something that is doable. And especially we've started using it more often at Abbeydale because we know that it makes it more accessible for more people. So the fact that it adds a little bit of expense to it is, is completely worthwhile to make it so that more people are able to drink it. But I think possibly the price is a factor. I know there's somebody on Untapped who keeps checking in beers saying it has that gluten-free taste. It doesn't know. It doesn't have a taste. But and I think it's something that it is quite difficult to communicate in a way, because obviously like the labels say gluten-free, but then the labels also list barley and often wheat and oats and all sorts of things as allergens. So I think it's something that, because it's still quite new, a lot of people are still learning about. And I suppose, Matt, it's the kind of thing that I guess now, if you see something that's listed as gluten-free, you will be aware of what Clarex is, and you personally have that knowledge to confidently be able to buy that beer. But for somebody who doesn't understand what that enzyme is and what it does, I can imagine it not being an easy thing to kind of discover, if that makes sense.
Definitely. I mean,
in the brewery, don't you?
Yeah, well, there's 3 different ways of making a gluten-free beer, really. The most common one now, which I dare say probably 99% of gluten-free beers are, which is the brewer's Clarex method, which seems to work really well. And I mean, it basically breaks down the gluten levels in it to below 20 parts per million, which means it's obviously deemed safe for celiacs, people with gluten intolerance, that sort of thing to drink. Obviously, like you say, the cans are still labelled as containing wheat, barley, oats, rye, that sort of stuff. Because obviously, with it containing that ingredients, I think it's more a legality that you have to. I mean, and there is the confusion out there that people are like, oh, how can it have wheat in and be gluten free? And I think a lot of people maybe don't have that same trust in Brewers Clarex as well, that it does reduce the gluten levels, even though, I mean, it's proven it does. Now, what another method of like making gluten-free beer is using gluten-free grains, like quinoa, for example. They use quite a bit to make different beers, and the taste of them isn't the same as like a beer that's got Clarex in it at all. And that's the type of thing I would expect comments where, oh, I can tell this beer's gluten-free. And personally, I don't enjoy them myself either. And then the other method is by using gluten-free barley grains, which I think there's a brewer up in Scotland that have been trying this method, where like they still use the same ingredients, but they'll get a variant of barley that's already gluten reduced. So that's the 3 ways of doing it, really. But like I said, the way everyone I speak to understands is the brewer's Clarex method, which seems to work pretty much all the time, I think, really, yeah.
I'm just thinking, actually, Matt, about times we've been in bars, and you're one of them people who you're quite happy to take a bit of a risk on it anyway. You're quite,
Yeah.
You're educated enough to kind of think, I know that brewery, I know this sort of situation. But I think sometimes there's a little bit of, in the staff in bars, having the confidence of kind of saying, oh, well, it's, ones that aren't lit, because my point was going to be that to get it, to have the gluten-free thing, you have to have it kind of sent off, and you have to have so many batches tested.
And I think that adds a lot of cost as well, especially for maybe smaller brewers.
So I was thinking maybe that is more of an issue than the cost of Clarex. It's more that you've got to constantly get it kind of verified by an independent company. But you were saying there's plenty of beers out there which are gluten-free, but because they're not being tested, they're just released to the public, anyway. But having a bit of kind of knowledge, you've kind of got, it'll be fine, and it generally tends to be fine.
Yeah, I've never had a problem doing that.
So my point was, I think that sometimes there's that kind of, not an education, but that's confidence in staff. Sometimes thinking, when you're going, oh, is that gluten free? And you're going, they say, oh, well, no, but I think it is, so I'll have it. And they're like, have this kind of, maybe education in the industry from the other side of the thing might be kind of a good thing. There's still kind of a risk involved, obviously, if things aren't tested. But there's a risk in every sort of food, isn't there? You know, may contain nuts because there were nuts used in a recipe half a mile down the factory or something. You know what I mean?
With Heathen, we only label the cans as gluten-free. The kegs and the casks, even though it's exactly the same beer, are not, because in a pub like the Devonshire Cat, which had a dedicated line, it was safe for them to say the beer was gluten-free. But there are some people that are sensitive enough to gluten that if a different beer had been on before and there was just a little bit of residual gluten-y stuff in the line, it could still be present and could still make somebody ill. So as a brewery, it's difficult. We obviously don't want to take all of that kind of responsibility when it's partly dispense is still a part of it as well that can have an impact. So for that reason, it is only the ones that are labelled. But obviously, I think most venues are obviously look after their beer really, really successfully. But it's just that extra little bit of control that when you don't have it and when it is something that can genuinely make people ill, it's something to be particularly cautious of.
I think even one of those first beers that I heard about were kind of brewed gluten-free, let's say, with the Clarex in it, but wasn't initially obviously wasn't labelled. And yeah, that was one of them that I'd heard about. Oh, that's gluten-free. So I mean, I've been drinking Heathen probably quite a while before they ever had that gluten-free label on. Same with Magic Rock. I mean, they made obviously Phantasma probably 3-4 years ago now. Then they brought out Sorcery, which is a more session pale ale type thing, and like that had been out a year before they'd ever put a gluten-free label on. But there were like a few of us out there that knew it was safe to drink and had been drinking it quite a while, and then turns out they put a label on it, which makes it more accessible for everyone else that maybe doesn't have the same contacts in the industry as I do. Because I mean, if I've ever got a question about Aberdale beer, I'll come to yourself. I mean, there's Sean, loads of knowledge, and then there's other brewers that I'm in contact with as well that are like, man, sure, this beer, we're going to get it tested and whatever, but just so you know. So, yeah.
Matt, could I ask you a question? A couple of questions, in fact. One, we never felt any pressure from you, actually. You were always very encouraging in terms of gluten-free beers. And you're right, when we first started, it was Wall Top and a couple of others. And
I think it was Wall Top and Brass Castle.
Yeah, quickly snowballed. And you're right, we've had as many as 30, about 20, I think, when I counted yesterday in the shop. But so your encouragement has been phenomenal and much appreciated. But two things really. One, what happens to you if we were all sat now drinking a Kernel IPA and loving it, and you were having one with us? We'd all be fine, a little bit merrier at the end of it. But what would happen to you? What would happen?
I'd probably be away in the bathroom for quite a while.
Would you? Right. Yeah. So is the subsequent problem of drinking a non-gluten-free beer the same for all celiacs, or does it vary?
I'm not celiac myself. I'm just intolerant to gluten. So
right.
It's completely different if someone is a celiac.
Right.
If they drank it, it'd have like a lot more serious health concerns for them, let's say, when we feel.
Would that be immediate, Matt? Would that be immediate, or is that a build-up of drinking the wrong beers?
I think that's a more long-term thing.
Yeah.
Whereas, like with the intolerance that I have, for example, it's more like it's there and then, and maybe it'd be over in 24 to 48 hours. There'd be no further, like that'd be it, if you know what I mean.
Is it an autoimmune thing? I know that's probably not going to help the situation, but isn't that where it's? Is that what kind of celiac disease is?
As far as I know, yes. Yeah. I mean, I've not looked into it massively because it's not something I've got myself, so I don't need to worry about that. But yeah.
Sean, I was just thinking before I said that. Have you got another question? Sean, before you.
Yeah, you go and ask me yours though, and then
No,
I'll
it might go on a
mine.
No, go on. You ask because it might go
Oh,
on a
my other one was whether Matt's got to a stage now and a confidence and knowledge level where if you're going a night out, Matt, do you have to ultra plan your night out to make sure that you're going to be able to taste something tasty and healthy? Or are you free and easy now? In Sheffield, perhaps you're free and easy, but if you go somewhere else, do you have to really plan and contact people before you go on a typical night out?
Yeah, so like you say, Sheffield, there's pretty much nowhere I can't go and get a beer, which is amazing. Like up in Leeds and Manchester, like the big cities in the north, they're like great. Again, there's probably not many bars you can go in and not find something. But I remember the week before we went into lockdown, actually, we were over in Whitby for just like a weekend break and whatever. And there were a lot of like research and planning that went into that as to where and go and get a beer and enjoy it. And I mean, whenever we go like traveling abroad and whatever, I probably spend a good week like Googling and then sending messages to bars and breweries to see what they've got and where it'll be. And yeah, so it's not as easy as finding a craft beer bar and going, I'll go there and have a drink. There's a lot of, I could go there, but is there any point if they've not got a beer I can drink? And like a lot more craft bars abroad, let's say, don't always have a cider option either, which I mean, it's not what you're going there for, obviously, but if they've not got a gluten-free beer, it's the second best option, let's say. But,
My thing I was going to ask you, Sean, was kind of your experience as like a, as a beer shop, and kind of, do you feel like you're understocked because of availability, or do you think you've got plenty, or
it became prior to lockdown. It became very, very easy. So we did get to 30 beers a few times. Abbeydale have helped enormously, of course, being a local brewery to us and having a vast majority of their range is gluten free. We've always stocked World Top. First Chop we've stocked plenty of times. Obviously, Magic Rock used to be the case as well. So it became Brass Castle. I've got a phenomenal range. So it became quite easy to do that. But we had a lad who came to the shop only yesterday morning. A lad came to the shop and I said, I'm after gluten-free beers, but I suppose there's no point in asking. That's exactly what he said. I like a beer, but there's probably no point in asking. I'm gluten-free. So I said, well, let's just count him now because I'm doing a gluten-free podcast tomorrow, and I could do with knowing. And there were 20, but he didn't buy one. And he was one of those that still felt as if that trust was an issue. I was quoting breweries to him that he was unfamiliar with. And he didn't want to commit and didn't want to buy one, despite the fact I was very reassuring and saying that it was much easier for him. He was still very worried about it and not quite as trusting. So,
I think there are some people who, even with the Brewers Claret, I think there are certain people who would still, it's still a bit of a kind of a personal risk of consumption, really. If you are fully, they are still in there. So I don't know if you're allergic to them or something like that.
It's if you have a barley or wheat allergy that then becomes a problem. A number of people who are allergic to gluten also have that barley and wheat allergy, which would be when Brewers Clarets can't tick that box for them. But I mean that's a small percentage of like people that are gluten intolerant.
We put a gluten-free box together, Adam. Maybe sometime January time for a customer that came in to buy as a gift for someone else, and they enjoyed the buying experience. They were happy that there were plenty available. But I got a phone call maybe an hour after they'd left the shop, absolutely disgusted that we had sold them beers that clearly had as an ingredient barley, wheat, and so on. They were really probably the worst phone call I've ever taken from a customer in terms of their outright outrage that they've been conned into giving us 20, 30, 40 quid, wherever it cost them at the time. So it needed a lot of reassuring to calm that customer down and explain the 50 parts per million, 20 parts per million, and so on. So yeah.
It's quite interesting actually. The amount of times I do come into your shop, and obviously like there's only a handful of people in there with being so small. The amount of times I do get people in who are looking for gluten-free beers, or just or people who, like not new people kind of searching for it, but people who have come for that new gluten-free beer.
Yeah.
Do you find your customers are quite knowledgeable then, or do you find that it's mainly people who are a little bit in the dark with it all? Or?
No, very knowledgeable. So we've got clear customers who like Matt, who are gluten-free customers, and so I would go as far as to say that in a typical 6-day week, on at least 4 of those days, we'll have someone in looking for gluten-free beers, and so the explosion in the number available to customers and the fact that we stock them just means that people come along. And so we occasionally on social media, perhaps not enough, promote the fact that there are plenty of gluten-free beers out there, and that did reduce during lockdown, but as quickly extended again since. So we get a lot in, and the vast majority are very knowledgeable. It's just sometimes you might get someone buying a gift for someone else, and then they start to fret and worry about it.
I suppose it's probably more of a problem outside the kind of craft beer bubble. People who are obviously quite passionate about drinking beer.
I'm just going to close the window because it's pouring with rain here. I apologize.
Yeah, I was saying probably outside the kind of specialist beer drinkers. If you're just a beer drinker generally, like kind of, to be honest, Matt, like you kind of were.
Yeah.
You were just kind of like, well, you're not looking because you drink what you drink, you just go on with your life, and you have what is available in the standard, drinking establishment. And if you don't do what you've done, which is basically badger people, ask, and and hunt it down, then I suppose you could, even though there's so much beer out there, 500 plus that you've had, you could kind of go through your life and not even know they were even there.
More than likely, yeah. I mean, like the main beer I knew of kind of before getting into this craft journey really was the Estrella Daura or Dora or whatever people call it, Spanish lager, which, I mean, at the time I really enjoyed drinking it, but then like after getting into craft beer and actually find something with a bit of taste, it made a massive difference. And I realised that that's not where like intolerance to gluten has to stop, and there are like choices out there that you can enjoy. But yeah, I mean, like, the funny thing is, before I like stopped eating gluten or whatever, the only beers I'd ever drank were standard pub lagers. So well, it weren't something I've ever missed, but it's more like it's something I've gained now, I guess. Really.
I was just thinking of something you used to do at Christmas, and if you still do it, you tend to do your 12 days of gluten-free Christmas thing, and kind of do your top 12 of that year. Have you got a top 5 of all time, kind of just that springs to mind? I mean, no pressure if you've not, but any that kind of come to mind.
Yeah, I mean,
are available.
So last night I think I had probably one of my favourite beers I've ever drank, which was Wonder Beyond over in Manchester, Pursuit, which is a 10% milkshake Imperial IPA that's also gluten-free and lactose-free, so it caters for gluten-free market and the vegan market. I forget the name of the beer it's trying to, Elysium maybe, one of their big sellers that was trying to replicate with it. But yeah, really great beer, that one. I mean, if it's put on number 1 or not, I don't know, but it's definitely up there. Like the new Wanderer that you two are both drinking, great beer again. And then like Lervig and Verdant did the It's Not Me, It's You collab beer they did, and that one again really nice. Other than that, I think that there's kind of quite a few that I thought like definitely up there as really good beers, but being able to pick from them now, it's getting more and more difficult the more I drink. And I mean that's probably going to continue to happen. So yeah.
Cool, good stuff. So Few things for us to discuss because it has been a couple of weeks. Well, I suppose it's been probably 3 weeks since we've done kind of a normal episode with us, because obviously a couple of weeks ago was the Hop Fest, and it was kind of a bit of a crazy weekend. So stuff that's happened. I mean, obviously pubs reopened yesterday. That's fairly significant. But we'll talk about that in a moment, because we need to reflect on the fact that there's one pub that's definitely not going to be reopening, which has actually been mentioned a couple of times already tonight, which is the Devonshire Cat, which it was announced, I think it was just before last weekend, that it's one of, we guess probably one of a number of venues that won't kind of reopen, certainly in their current guise. Obviously, Laura, I guess you've got more reason than most to kind of feel quite sad about this, although I'm sure we all feel very sad about it, because it's been ever since I kind of discovered proper beer, even, you know, Devonshire Cat in its old form before it was then kind of redone and reopened in its Abbeydale form, has always been kind of just one of those go-to pubs, and I guess that's the case for most of us. But a really kind of sad day when that was announced, wasn't it, Laura?
Yeah, I'm still incredibly sad about it. I think it's such a shame. I'm pretty much the same. It's one of the pubs that I would always go and drink in, long before I worked in anything to do with beer. Always been great place. Always had really lovely, knowledgeable staff on. Always had a great range of beer, good food, and I think, as a person, not just as an employee of the same business, I'm gonna really, really miss it. So yeah, absolutely gutted about it. But I think it's just one of those awful things that it's with the position that it was in, obviously being located directly in kind of student district, and got a lot of trade from the students that live there, as well as the kind of 5 o'clock drinkers from the offices around, and you know, they're not there, and we don't know when they might be there. So I think the way that it was just meant that it wasn't going to be able to reopen. I think it's such a nice venue as well, that, you know, I think there's still a hope that potentially it'll have new life with different owners, maybe, I don't know. But I think it's something that Sheffield will really, really miss, and it would be good to see it come back if possible. But yeah, sad times.
It used to be a shopping stop off for me and Deborah, James. When I was a teacher, driving to Sheffield on a Saturday to do a bit of shopping wasn't my favourite pastime, and was only sweetened by the possibility of perhaps going to watch Barnsley in the afternoon and so on. But that used to be our stop off. We would do a bit of shopping and go and have a chip butty in the Dev Cat, and a nice quick drink, like. So that was a little bit of a sweetener. But so it's fantastic. Again, before Abbeydale were involved, yeah, I used to love it. Used to love that little bottle, a sort of little store that they got that you could see through and peer through. Quite a lot of Belgian beers were in there as well. So it probably the bottle store was bigger than our shop at the time. But we had fond memories, particularly of it.
I think for everyone, it's a pub that will harbour many memories, because it's just been there in its two different guises for such a long time. And you know, I can remember, I mean, hundreds of times I must have been in there, and often kind of after the football at Hills, we're going into town and kind of going there, and then ultimately going on to the Washington afterwards, where the night turns quite blurry, as it always does in the Washington. So you know, it will be very strange if it's not there. And Laura, as you say, you know, hopefully in some form or another, there may be someone that comes in and that it does live on as a pub, because it's a fantastic building and a brilliant place, and it will be really sad if it doesn't live on in some way or another. We are now in a situation where we do have pubs that have reopened. Obviously, not every pub. There's quite a lot that are reopening at various points during the next week. Quite a few that, for various reasons, still can't reopen or still don't feel able to reopen. So I guess important that we kind of make that point that there are still pubs out there that are kind of struggling in the current situation. But a lot that reopened yesterday, and indeed, I know that we have at least one person here who actually went to a pub yesterday, and that again is Laura. Yeah, tell us about your day at the pub yesterday. Well, maybe not day at the pub, but visit to the pub yesterday.
So we weren't planning on going to the pub yesterday. I think because kind of wanted to give things a chance to settle down a little bit, see how, see which places were kind of comfortable and all of that kind of thing. So we just went for a bit of a wander through town. Ended up walking past the Sheffield Tap on our way home. And just so happened that Liz, who we've already mentioned, who used to run the Dead Cat, was stood outside, and we gave her a wave, and she said that there were tables free, and it was all kind of nice and calm in there. So we decided to pop in. There were people in there, but everyone, the new layout that they've got is really, really, really well thought through. I think it's a pub that lends itself quite nicely to table service. It felt a bit like being in Belgium, actually. It had that kind of nice feel about it. The staff were kind of sort of a little kind of cautious, kind of letting people sort of leaving them to themselves, but being really on it with the table service. So it was absolutely brilliant. Really enjoyed it. And my first pint was a cask Jaipur, which was brilliant. Me and Jim both had a pint, and Jim's lasted 3 whole mouthfuls, and then it was gone. Like, Liz had barely even put them down on the table and asked how we were, and had to go back and get him another one.
A quick one, Laura.
We only stayed for about an hour, but had an absolutely lovely time, and really glad we went.
How does it work then, Laura? Does basically someone come with a menu of what's on cask today? Like, Madame, would like any?
Well, I think where we were sat, we could see all the handfuls and everything quite clearly, and we've got a little one-way system in place. So if you are sat away, you'll still kind of walk past the casks. But I think they probably would have menus, or I'm very confident that the staff that were on would have been able to kind of advise. They're always really good in there anyway. So had a Jaipur, a really nice beer called Lowrider from Bristol Beer Factory, and a Bad Seed lemon and lime sour, and they were all really nice, and just had a really nice time. And then went home again.
Sounds good. I seem to think that Sheffield Tap's one of the places that actually have their like beer menu on their website anyway, because I think they have an insane number of cans and bottles and stuff in there, don't they? So many times I've been in there kind of before getting a train somewhere, thinking it's actually easier to go on the website to look at what cans and bottles they've got than to try and actually see them all, because they're buried kind of behind the bar. I've not been in the pub yet, but I did walk past the Stag recently, earlier on today, which is my local. It became my local just when I moved, which was about a week before lockdown. So I've not been in it since it's been my local. But there, anyone that knows the Stag will know that it's got kind of a car park to the side of it that's kind of in 2 levels. So there's like the lower car park and then an upper bit of the car park. And they've turned that upper bit just into a massive big kind of outside seating area. So it already got like a beer garden down one side where the conservatory is, but then they've converted the whole of that top car park into another. So I actually walked past that thinking, that actually looks like there's a lot of space. Even if it got busy, there's a lot of space for people. There's no need for anyone to have to worry about being too close to someone else. All the tables look really spaced out. And I thought, obviously, if it's raining, it's not much good. But I kind of thought, I can kind of sort of, I've been very like, I'm not ready to go back to the pub yet. But when I walked past the Stag, I thought, I can imagine myself going there, because it does look like it would be possible to be safe. And I think, just to say, huge credit to the venues that have reopened, particularly some of the smaller ones. who tend to be obviously a lot of the smaller places in Sheffield are the ones that that we've done episodes at and that we're quite good friends with anyway. But the work that's been involved for them to kind of get ready for this and to reopen in a way that's safe, I think is just phenomenal. So huge well done to every venue. And I think we've probably all got opinions on it, and I'll throw it open if anyone wants to chat about it. I kind of feel like I'm just not, I don't think I'd feel safe going to the pub yet, but having walked past a couple today, I don't know if that's changed a little, and my opinion on that might kind of change a bit, but I think it's very much down to people's personal choice, and kind of people have got to do what they think is right in kind of these odd times that we're in, but can't fault the majority of venues that have kind of worked so hard to kind of get ready, which leads on to another talking point, which I guess we probably all might want to say something on it, which is one of the news stories actually that's been knocking around this week is the tweet that was put out by Sheffield Council, which was so I was working at Radio Sheffield last week, so kind of reflected on this on air, which just said basically, if you go to a pub, coronavirus will be there waiting for you. It was an incredibly ill-advised tweet, which they deleted, then apologised for, then deleted the apology, and then apologised again. And I think they apologised for deleting the apology. And it's like, oh, this is just a masterclass in how to really screw something up. So that whole episode just so daft, really foolish. Particularly when venues have worked so hard to actually make it as safe as is possible in the current situation. So pubs reopen. What are our thoughts?
James, sorry, Adam, the Sheffield Council tweet was truly pathetic, and their subsequent follow-on of apology delete, apology change of tweet was almost as bad. We've got a friend, Laura Bob, who was in Bar Stewards yesterday, said it was absolutely fantastic, went really well. And the one I've seen the most of online, or in terms of it looking the most impressive, is the mill owners. They seem to have used the outdoor area at Kellam Island Museum in a spectacular way, and I don't know whether there's a long-term potential future to use that for them when things perhaps go back to normal opening, but they seem to have done a fantastic job. And just from pictures, which a lot of us are taking reassurance from pictures online, really, it really did look spectacular. But yes, Sheffield Council, our landlords, but a terrible own goal, terrible.
I went on a bike ride about 12 o'clock yesterday, not on purpose, but realising that's actually probably about the time where pubs are going to be opening. And the majority was really quite quiet, really, and it seemed that people had things under control. I mean, I'm not going to name any names. There was one smaller pub that I thought probably could have done better. But yeah, I don't feel like I think yesterday I was ready to kind of go back. But in hindsight, I mean, quoting someone that Steve at Beer O'Clock Shows put on his Twitter, so it's not like calling him out, but he was quite passionately like, I'm not going back to the pub until September. Then he's kind of gone today. Day two, I've gone to the pub, kind of. And I think it just depends on, I think depends where and what kind of pub it is, I think there'll be a lot of pubs and you'll see these kind of sensationalized extremes of what's happening across the country. Believe what you want out of the angle of photography or whatever, and there will be kind of situations where things are kind of not really being adhered to. But from what I've seen, most places have been manageable and quiet. And I agree what you said, James. I think everyone I've seen putting on stuff on their social media has been like step by step, process by process, and what they're doing, and they've thought it out, and they're not trying to rush it back. But then again, I also respect all the other people who have decided not to reopen, and I kind of on their side. I would never think, oh, why are they not reopening? I kind of think that if I was opening a pub, I would probably not open yesterday either. But each their own, and you never know what sort of situations each pubs are in terms of what they need to do to kind of or need to maybe take a slight risk on, or so yeah, we'll just I think it'll. The only thing I was thinking is like, I wonder whether the UK has got the wrong culture and drinking culture compared to the rest of Europe, in the sense of that, like, I can imagine, when you go, they've got that kind of cafe culture abroad. It's just more relaxed. I feel we've got this more like full-on culture, where it's just like drink, drink, drink. And I imagine that people in Europe get just as drunk or just have just as much fun, but it feels much more like elegant or relaxed about it. And I think that sometimes that this country has this culture that we just hit things a bit full on. We aren't really thinking about it, and I worry that that might be our kind of downfall, if there is any, as a country.
Yeah, there were certainly reports yesterday of some pubs where things got quite crazy and sort of late into the evening, that it got kind of a bit messy in places. I've got a friend in Hillsborough who says there were all kinds of stuff going on there. But I guess it was day one, and if people are going to rush off straight back to the pub and spend all day there on day one, that's what they're going to do. It should kind of start to settle down a little bit now. And as you mentioned there, Adam, about the places that haven't reopened yet, and I think for us, quite a lot of our favourite venues fall into that category who've not reopened yet. They tend to be the quirkier places that maybe have got a bit more work to do to make it safe. But also, I just think, well, fair play for the places that are actually just looking at how it works elsewhere and seeing what is ultimately going to be the best way for them to be able to make it work. Because I want to say there's no right and wrong. There probably is a wrong, but kind of ignoring that end of the scale, there is no right and wrong way of going about this. It's not like if you don't reopen on day one, then you're doing something wrong. Similarly, it isn't a bad thing to get to open on the earliest available date that you can do. It's like there's no rules to this. We've never been in this situation before, and similarly for us as drinkers, I fall into that category a bit like Steve that you mentioned there, Adam, about kind of, I was like, I'm not going to go back to the pub for ages. Like, I don't need to go to the pub. It's fine. I've got beer at home. I've got you guys every weekend. I've got other stuff that I do. It'll be fine. I don't need to. But then seeing a couple of pubs, and I thought, actually, I could go there and feel quite safe. So maybe that'll change. But there's no rules. There's no right. There's no wrong to this. We've all got to do what we think is right. And Sean, as you kind of mentioned there, the problem is stuff like, when people make big silly sort of gestures, which is exactly what the council did by trying to scare people off the idea of going to the pub is dangerous. That's nonsense. Going to some pubs, obviously, will probably be more dangerous than others, depending how seriously some are or aren't taking it. I got messages yesterday from friends about, I'll not mention any names here, but perhaps a particularly large pub chain where by lunchtime people were spilling out onto the road because it was just absolutely packed inside. And you're like, well, that's probably going to be the more likely place where you're going to get issues if ultimately this comes down to if there's someone in there that's actually got the virus, isn't it? That's what we're talking about. So, it's just people just got to do what they think is right, but we also need to not tell other people whether they're right or wrong for the way that they decide to play it, because it's very much a personal thing. Cool. I'm aware that we've been gabbing away for about an hour now, so what we've not done is talk about our respective beers. So I kind of talked about it in advance, so I'll let Adam do our collective review. I'm fairly certain that I will echo whatever he says about Wanderer.
Yeah, I think basically what I said about last night is that I enjoyed it so much last night that I nearly drank my second one, which I'd managed to savour. Really good. It's really smooth for 6.8% as well. It's not sickly or anything for that kind of strength. It's almost quite dry in certain ways. But I'm really hoping that there's some more locally that I can pick up. And I've even convinced my dad that he should be drinking one, because he's been recently delving into the world of Abbeydale. So it's spot on. Can't fault it really at all, to be honest. Best beers since kind of the days of the oh god, what's it called? The pink can. It's dropped out of my head. We used to talk about it all the time.
Thinking Huckster.
Yeah.
Sorry, it just went from my head all of a sudden. I had it there. But yeah, it's really good.
Good review. I'd agree with that. Matt, what's your beer review?
The Olivier Gluten Gone, it's very nice, black pale ale. It's definitely not my favourite beer out there, but it's very drinkable. It's 5%, but feels probably a little bit less than I'd say. It's quite a sessionable beer. I mean, it's quite tropical on the nose, and it's slight bitterness, but yeah, on the whole, nice beer. And I mean, I've got a few more to get through as well. So yeah.
Tonight?
Not tonight, no, definitely not tonight.
Very sensible, very sensible. Sean, Bad Kitty.
Yeah, a little bit smoky toffee just initially, and then all mellowed out by a chocolate vanilla finish. So a sweetie pie that's bad, sweet and bad is the perfect combination. Delicious.
Have you had the very Bad Kitty before?
Yes, yeah, all the way up, and we're looking forward to the very, very, very Bad Kitty eventually.
Brilliant. And Laura.
Yeah. Just, I mean, I drink quite a lot of Heathen, as you might expect, and that one was, really nice and tasty, easy drinking, nice and fresh. Enjoyed it. And I don't know if anybody spotted that after an hour of chat since the name Olivia Gluten Gone was mentioned, it made me chuckle all over again. So
You have a little laugh at the glutimus minimus as well, like
yeah, I did,
like 10 seconds.
I love it,
said.
I would love to attend one of their like name planning meetings that they must have. They're probably just like, just go and brew a beer. Doesn't matter what's in it. Don't matter. What about the name? Right, we've got hours have got to be spent on coming up with this. Right then. So last thing, obviously, is our beer selfie pick. So if everyone's got their cans, and hopefully me and Adam will not be next to each other on this picture because that would be.
Well, you are on mine.
Cool, good stuff. Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your
Cheers, Matt.
Olivia Gluten Gons, and good to see you all. And we've not discussed it yet, but I'm guessing that we'll be back next weekend, and we'll be back into our kind of fairly regular sort of pattern. Sean's the one to ask because he's the busy one these days. So
I'm relaxed again now. All relaxed now.
All
the team are back, so it's relaxing now.
Good stuff. So thank you for your company, and we'll see you next weekend. Thanks all.
Bye.
Cheers.